All right, Gregory Lamberson and Chris Cosgrave. I am really excited to talk about Guns of Eden. I saw the movie quite a few times already with the screener links in because I love this type of genre. This is one of my favorite type of genres. I grew up with the genre, and I just had a blast watching this.
Very cool. Thanks for having us.
So my first question is for Gregory: how did you come up with the idea for this one? I mean, because we all know you're more affixed with the horror genre. So what was it like going to do a full-on action flick this time around?
Well, I am a horror guy and I've always been a horror guy, but I've also always been more than a horror guy. And I wrote this script way back in 1996, believe it or not. I was developing a similar type of project with a friend, and we had a parting of the ways, amicable. And he said, you should write your own since you have these other ideas you want to do. And I wrote it just to get it out of my system. I never, as soon as I finished it, I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to get to make this movie. There's so many characters and there's a helicopter, and I was living in New York City. But every few years I would pull it out, noodle around with it a little bit, and Chris and I started working together, and I shared it with him. And it just happened that this project that was so difficult to conceive of doing on a low budget became the most practical project suddenly with COVID, because 90% of it was outdoors. And in the intervening years, I met Chris and I saw a little reel he had done, which included some miniature helicopter action. And I made a note right away. Oh, suddenly this project might be possible to do.
That's awesome. And Chris, what was it like getting involved in this project from your end?
I've wanted to do an action movie for decades now. And every once in a while, I would drop a hint to Greg. And so I actually got kind of accidentally roped into shooting the movie because I originally contacted Greg when I heard about the movie to see if there would be a part for me, because I do a tiny bit of acting on the side. And Greg said, well, how about you shoot the movie? that came as kind of a shock, but I jumped at the chance. It was great. I love working with Greg.
I was a little more definitive than that, actually. Said I need you to shoot the movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you like demanded it. I need you to shoot the movie.
Chris is a big action fan, and he's got his very specific skill set. And I mean, I know a lot of cinematographers in our area. He's 5 blocks away from me, by the way. But this project just screamed for his abilities, beginning to end. So it was kind of part of my plan that he had to be a part of it on a bigger scale than he normally is. He does a lot of visual effects for me, and he does a lot of saves in post-production that people aren't even aware of, fixes things and solves problems and stuff that you don't necessarily notice on screen, but I notice because I sweat bullets wondering how we're going to solve some of these issues that always come up.
But you two sound like a complete dream team if that's the case. For sure. But
well, thank you.
So Chris, who were your influences as a cinematographer? Like who inspired you to follow this career path?
Hold on one sec.
Chris and I are both stay-at-home fathers, and he may be doing some stay-at-home fathering.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Oh, you're good. I may have a day job, but I'm a dad of 4, so I know how that is.
I just inhale the action genre, so it was a little bit of everything. We talked a lot about the look of the movie early on, and we talked about a couple different movies. Greg is a big Rambo fan, so we talked a lot about Rambo. And I mean, as far as action movies in the woods, you're not going to find too much better than that. So
yeah. First Blood, of course. So that's a classic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt that it was inspired. It had that First Blood influence with it, and even though that was kind of like a major film with Stallone, I mean, this had the feel of like a 70s, maybe early, like 80s, like B movie that you would shoot in the middle of the woods, back in the home video market days. That's what I felt with this, and like I said, it was nicely done.
Well, thank you.
It's definitely a nod to both of those decades. There's a little bit of 70s thriller, a little realism in some parts in the beginning before it erupts into a full scale, canon type of film.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
definitely knew what we were going for. There was no indecision there.
And so what was it like working with the cast on this one? I mean, Alexandra, oh my gosh, she was just mind blowing. She's like going to be one of the next, like, I think she's going to be in the next generation of these female action heroes, who pop out of nowhere and just like make an impact. She did a hell of a job on this one. How did you get her on board with this one?
Um, Another filmmaker recommended her, and I think almost concurrent with me asking filmmakers if they recommended anyone, because I didn't want to go through the whole send me 1,000 resumes and let me find out how many of you actually look like you know, represent yourself in your headshot, and how many of you are the age you represent. There's a whole disqualifying process as you weed through them. I started out by asking filmmakers, who do you think would be right for this? And John Woodruff, who did a movie called Animal Among Us, recommended her right around the same time that she just happened to send her resume, I think, to my wife, who's part of the production team. And it was just fortuitous. And I right away, I sent her reel to Chris. And, there was no question that, this is the woman who's going to play this action character. Let's hope she can act, and we'll go from there. And she did a really good audition. We watched the audition on a big screen when we were in the little theater shooting the introduction to our crowdfunding campaign. Do you remember that, Chris?
Oh, absolutely.
So, and my wife and I interviewed her on Zoom a couple of times, and basically, actors have a lot of indie projects come to them that never come to fruition.
Right.
You tell people, oh yeah, we'll get the money somehow, and it doesn't happen a lot of the time. So I mean, we had to let her know that one way or the other we were going to get the money, and she believed it. And so she was on board a couple of months even before we did the crowdfunding campaign, I think. So, there were 4 main producers: Chris, myself, my wife, a guy named Keith Lakowski, who provided a lot of the gear, and Alexander was sort of the 5th key person, to make this all come together, because the whole thing really did hinge on her. No matter how good anyone else was in any of the other parts, we had to have the right person in that role.
That's awesome. When from your viewpoint, Chris, what was it like working with Alexandra in terms of the photography and like the action scenes, since you were the one, behind the camera and shooting it? What was that like?
She was fantastic. There's in the climax, I'm gonna try not to spoil anything. There's a lot of close-up action. I had to get kind of intimate with 2 of the other actors. Very intimate's not
Not that one.
let's take that the wrong way.
Oh, we know what you mean. We know what you mean. You just had to you had to feel like they got the right angles and everything. I know what you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could feel a synergy between me and Alex, that every time that I started getting a hint that, okay, wait, I'm gonna lose her frame, she would intuit where she needed to be. And it was just this great synergy. And she's a great actor for the camera without making it look very obvious that she's playing to the camera. She's aware of where the camera is.
That's something you don't see much, especially with, this genre. I mean, a lot of times with this genre, you always worry about how good the action is going to look, because you'll even if the action has some CGI to it, it still may look bad if the camera angles don't look right and you don't have the right shot, master shot. But like I said here, I mean, it's nicely done once again, and even the visual effects were really well done for what you had.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So how long did shooting take? And did you guys experience any difficulties with certain things during production that you had to go to plan B in terms of that?
It was really well planned out, and it went according to plan, and there were really no problems other than one day a sheriff's deputy didn't get the word we were shooting at a park, so he held us up for about 45 minutes, which were 45 minutes, frankly, we needed. We couldn't just sacrifice them. And another day we were outside, and we had a whole bunch of actors holding the prop guns, which were mostly, some of them were guns that Chris painted up, like really cheap Walmart toy guns, and some of them were props that I was borrowing from another filmmaker friend who had a huge collection. But a police helicopter started circling us. And I told everybody, put down your weapons and walk away from them. And I called the film commissioner, and it took a few minutes and the helicopter left. So who knows what they thought up in the air, because, you know, they have cameras and things that they can see people very clearly on the ground.
that's I could just picture what the police were thinking when they had a helicopter, like it basically something big's going on here. Is there gonna be a mass shooting? But I like the fact that Chris used Walmart toy guns as props for this, because I do like that whole practical effect, and I think it works a lot better.
Well, we're very budget conscientious,
yeah,
and we were also very conscientious about being safe with the weapons on set and notifying the different municipalities. And on this one day, the call was not made. But, you know, we solved the problem and kept rolling. I mean, pre-production is a really big part of it for me. Planning, and anticipating what problems could happen, and hopefully they don't. But I mean, Chris will tell you, every time I propose something, I say, but this could happen. And, you know, so everybody is thinking along those lines. But we only had 15 days to shoot the movie. And I have to say, I kind of like 18 days to shoot a film. It just wasn't there in the budget. And there were several days where we had to do maybe 2 big action scenes in one day when we really needed a whole day to do one. So we were constantly cutting corners, which is just what you do in independent filmmaking. And if we do it again, I'm going to make sure that we have the time so that we can devote an entire day to each action scene.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you guys made the most of what you had, and it worked well. And you know, I know time is always, like, I've always asked people what, you know, I've always asked indie filmmakers what's the biggest challenge, and a lot of them say, you know, a lot of everyone says time, basically, and you know, and the budget. But it seems like you guys made the most out of this budget.
It's such a time drain when all those actors have to have prop guns, and you do weapon safeties on set, and you do all the steps the way you're supposed to do, and it just eats up so much of your day. And then even if you have a small company move from this part of the woods to that part of the woods, getting all those people and then moved and then doing it again, it just, you're watching the sun change position. And you know, the film takes place over the course of one day, which was intentional. But we were shooting every day as the sun was going down. So in theory, there were 15 days when we had a sunset, when there should only have been one. And our color timer did a very good job coloring everything and balancing it out so that everything's even and follows a logical course of eventual sunset.
It's a movie that takes place in one day that has like 5 magic hours, which was fantastic for us.
That works. But in terms of the action sequences, you know, how did that come up? Like, how did you come up with? Did you have a stunt coordinator who worked with you, Chris, in terms of the shot? Did they know what they were doing in terms of, you know, did they help you get the shots right, or you just worked together right away in terms of shooting the action sequences?
Alex McBride choreographed all of our action, and the big knife fight scene. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. We choreographed the day before. We went in the afternoon, and we spent the rest of the day just going over the fight. And he worked a little bit with Alexandra and Tim for that fight. Most of the gun action Greg and I had worked out. There's another fight later on that we choreographed on the day. Greg and I went and shot different scenes while Alex took the talent to go completely choreograph the fight on the day. And wow. Greg and I came back, and he just showed us everything that he came up with, and we just rolled on it. And that was actually a single take. We did one take of that fight, and it's my favorite fight in the movie.
That's funny you said that, because about 2 years ago there was a movie called Army of One, and I interviewed Ellen Holman, the star of that movie, And she said that one of her big fight scenes, they only prepped for 1 hour, and it was a single take. It was also a oneer, and it was my favorite fight of that movie. And so I totally get your love of the genre, Chris, because if you said that's your favorite fight of the film, it's clear. It's like it works out everywhere.
Yeah, that fight was a great experience. I think that was the highlight of the shoot for me.
It's funny you mention Army of One, because after we did our campaign and we were having everything really deep in pre-production, Chris sent me a trailer for Army of One, and we're like, uh-oh. And I went through the script and I was pulling out stuff that I thought, oh, this might be too similar to that one. And then I saw the movie and I put most of the stuff back in. But we were worried about that film hurting us. And it was actually because that film did so well that Uncork'd gave us a distribution offer even before we started shooting. So it ended up working out in our favor, which for me rarely happens. The timing always seems to be off. And this time it seemed to work out the right way.
Yeah, I think it works well now. I mean, we're now, I think this movie would be a good double feature with Army of One, because you got the female military action hero. And of course, I know you got worried, Greg, but I could see this as a double feature only because not only you got these two strong protagonists, but their styles are different in terms of how the movies came out. So I would personally love to see this in a double feature with Army of One down the road.
Well, that implies big theater showings, and I like the sound of that.
And I think they should do it. And hopefully there are distributors, theater chains that are listening to this or watching this, and they're like, that might be a good idea. I hope they agree with me on that. So we'll see what happens.
The theater chains are in desperate need of movies right now. That's the biggest thing they face.
Exactly. I mean, let's just face it. We can only have so many blockbuster movies, but I think it's time indie films got back to theaters in a major way. And, we got the limited screens, but let's start getting the big ones out. I mean, if Terrifier 2 can do it, so can we. So can you guys.
That's what it's going to take, is some really ingenious and innovative theater bookers and people willing to try crazy things to get films out there and build word of mouth for them.
Exactly.
It's got to be different than what it is now for these indie films, which is just announce the day and date, reveal the poster and trailer, and see what happens.
Yep, exactly. And so I'm pretty excited about this movie. I'm hoping that everyone will get to see it. And with that said, what's next? Are you going back to the horror genre, Gregory, down the road, or is that you're returning to that genre, or are you gonna do?
I am in pre-production on a werewolf film I've been trying to get off the ground for about 3 years. But if that doesn't happen, we have a door open for a Guns of Eden 2. So
I was just gonna say that. I'm like, I could see a sequel to this down the road too. So I could be
in a perfect world, we could do both in the same year. But we'll see what happens.
Yep. And I know Chris will get involved with that with Guns of Eden 2 should that happen, because
absolutely I would jump at the chance.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really excited, and I hope, and for those of you who don't know, I did help the crowdfunding part of Guns of Eden, and you will see my name in the special thanks credits, and I'm really excited about that. I think it's actually my first special thanks credit ever. So
wow,
I saw that and I nearly shed a tear. I'm like, I can't believe I actually did help, with the crowdfunding portion of this. And
well, we appreciate the support.
Yeah, because I'm a huge lover of indie films, and I will try to do what I can to help them get made or do whatever I can. And I hope everyone gets to see Guns of Eden, because this was totally a kick-ass movie, and you guys did an amazing job on this.
And you're not just saying that because you contributed to the campaign.
No, I'm not. Nope. I am saying it because it's true. I grew up with this genre, during the home video market, and I felt that sense of nostalgia with this, and it'll be out in December, and I hope everyone gets to check it out. And Gregory and Chris, I can't thank you guys enough for talking about the movie, and I hope it becomes a success, and I hope to see a Guns of Eden 2 down that road.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you, World Film Geek Albert.
All right. Well, you guys take care. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.